Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar. And today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, effective strategies to manage the long tail. But before we get into the webinar, a couple of quick housekeeping issues for everyone. So Channel Focus Virtual will be on the 19th and 20th of April next year. So put those dates in your diary. It's always a very, very successful event. We've got some fabulous speakers lined up for 2023. And today, it's our last webinar of the year. We've had fabulous participation from everyone in the webinar. So please get involved in the chat, get involved by asking questions, by commenting. You can see the chat button at the bottom of your screen. And we look forward to not just delivering some great information for you, but also getting involved in a fabulous dialogue with you during the webinar. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our panelists. And I will start with Kate today. And Kate is the Director of Channel and Ecosystem Strategy at Spur Reply. She leads a team of 20 consultants and managers committed to driving revenue acceleration and outcomes for their clients. She's had wide-ranging partner and go-to-market strategy experience with multiple Fortune 500 firms. She's a passion for helping organizations adapt to and thrive in a shifting industry landscape, very important at the moment. And when not hunkered down, hiding from the rain, Kate enjoys hiking and running. So Kate, briefly tell us about Spur Reply.
Thanks so much, Rod. Welcome, everyone. Happy to be here. Spur Reply, formerly the Spur Group, is a go-to-market focused consulting firm that's based in the Seattle area. With decades of experience and over 4,000 engagements under our belt, we have a comprehensive approach to addressing business challenges. Our mission is to turn customer, partner, and employee experiences into competitive advantages. We're passionate about helping our clients gain actionable insights, grow revenue faster, and improve partner return.
Excellent. And our second panelist is Kevin Dean. And Kevin is the Chief Strategy Officer for Mind Matrix. And Kevin has 2 decades of channel experience. He's led digital programs at 2 Fortune 500 companies. And Kevin loves music of all genre. He plays bass guitar and has been scuba diving in the Red Sea and several other exotic locations. So, Kevin, tell us briefly about Mind Matrix.
Greetings, everyone. Super excited to be here today with this wonderful group of panelists. Mind Matrix provides one platform that's designed to seamlessly connect and enable outcome-based selling on a global scale by enabling collaborations with direct teams, channel partners, and ecosystem influencers. In addition to our traditional PRM and partner marketing, Mind Matrix has also developed the next generation ecosystem orchestration platform. Now, Mind Matrix helps companies drive revenue by automating their go-to-market strategies.
And our third panelist is Laurie Harner, and she's the AVP of Product Marketing for E2Open. And in her role as Assistant Vice President, Laurie leads the group that provides insights on the value of E2Open's channel shaping, business planning, demand sensing, collaborative manufacturing, and supply solutions. She joined E2Open in June of 2020, and before that, she held various leadership roles at Blue Yonder, Tor, and Microsoft. And Laurie lives in Denver, Colorado, and as a Denverite, loves everything outdoors. So, Laurie, tell us briefly about E2Open.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. E2Open is also a platform company. We provide channel solutions directly to our our customers, as well as a connection to the supply chain. So for many of our brands that we serve, we are connecting the worlds of channel to demand to supply to logistics, all on one platform. E2Open is a global company. We've been in business for approximately 20 years and have deep roots in not only supply chain, but also in channel.
And our next panelist is Heather Margolis, and she's the SVP of Marketing for 360 Insights. And prior to joining 360, Heather founded Spark Your Channel. They were creators of a through-channel marketing automation platform, and Channel Maven, a strategic channel marketing agency, both of which were acquired by 360 in November 2021. She's a recognized channel marketing expert and keynote speaker to a variety of audiences about entrepreneurship, B2B marketing, and channel marketing. Heather grew up in Massachusetts and now lives in Boulder, Colorado, with her husband and fellow entrepreneur, Simeon, and their 2 daughters and dog, Zoe. So Heather, tell us briefly about 360.
Thanks so much, Rod, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. 360 Insights is a channel incentive management platform and ecosystem management platform, and now houses the Channel Maven team as well. So channel marketing too, and demand gen with.
And our final panelist is Christine Stiles, and she is Director of Sales Enablement at ChannelAssist. And she's a career-long advocate of creating positive channel engagements and using incentives and automation to accelerate go-to-market outcomes, right down to the rep and the long tail. He has developed and managed industry-leading incentive programs such as HP Blue Carpet, which have delivered billions in revenue. And when not tackling complex channel challenges, Christine is an avid traveler who most enjoys being oceanside with her toes in the sand. So Christine, briefly, ChannelAssist.
I think I'm having some connectivity issues just in case, but basically ChannelAssist currently is celebrating its 20th year as a channel incentive management organization. And we have a platform, services, and program resources that allow companies to go beyond engaging the partner to really go into the individuals that make go-to-market ecosystem. And we use engagement, extra touch points, services, and segmentation to ensure that we're engaging that individual, arming them with the proper training, resources, incentivizing and monetizing their efforts, really that revenue and engagement flywheel from the partner level to the individual level to create that acceleration that everyone is looking for, ensuring that it's covered on a basis with localization, act global, be local. Thanks, Rod.
So we're talking about the long tail. I guess if you ask 50 people for a definition of the long tail, you probably get 55 answers. So for the purposes of today's webinar, we are defining the long tail as the unmanaged partners. So not those you are in direct touch with, those that typically sell a much smaller amount of your product or service. And we're talking about how we actually manage that long tail. So Kevin, you're front and center on my camera at the moment. So where is the opportunity with the long tail? Why should we care?
Well, I think there's a couple of opportunities. Number one, even though the number of long tail partners that you have is large, and on an individual basis, their contribution is small, collectively, that makes up a large amount of revenue. So just because a single partner isn't contributing a lot, when you pull that together, there's a lot of revenue to be considered. And I think that's where ultimately the big opportunity is.
Excellent. And Heather, do you want to step in on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Kevin. I would also say just because they're long tail to you and they don't lead with your products doesn't mean that they aren't actually your competitors or substitutes, primary partners or second tier partners. So you really need to think about, is it that you aren't offering them what they need, or that they're not doing the work that they need to do. Maybe it's your program that's unattractive and you need to look at ease of doing business. Is your product leading? Is your program something and a place where they can make money?
Excellent. And Kate, how important is distribution in managing and working with the long tail?
It's a great question. There's lots of discussions about the value of distribution in this, very dynamic environment. And the reality is, for the long tail, distribution still really, really matters. The key to using distribution effectively when you're thinking about the long tail is making sure that you have a genuine partnership with the disties that you're choosing to work with. One, select the right disties, right? Every single company, different focuses, and selecting the right disties will go a long way. And then focusing investment so that you're actually incenting the disties to do what you want them to do and having open dialogue about that, right? So disties are absolute experts at working with the long tail, but you're going to have conversations, and you're going to have to make sure that you have the right pay for performance pieces in place and the right business plan in place to make sure that you're focusing how they're engaging with your long tail.
Sorry, picking up on that, choosing the right disties. How do you go about that? What should you be looking for?
Well, I think it's alignment with your business model as well. Like, what are you selling? What are you providing? What value do you provide to them, and vice versa, right? So again, agree with Kate in that choosing the right distributors for what you want to, where you want to get your product is really important. Also, I think it's really important to have a mix of distributors, right? So I think in many cases, if you align your business model, different avenues of getting your products to the point of destination, also to have the ability to work along the distribution channel when it comes to transferring inventory, for instance. So if you've got inventory sitting in one distribution center, it's getting towards the end of the year, you're a high-tech company, for instance, and you want to make sure that all of the older stock of inventory is out so you can come into the new holiday season with a new product, for instance. You make sure that you can do that inventory transfer and that you have full visibility into that inventory between distributors to make that happen. And that can even be on the long tail, right? You might have some distributors that are working with some of your long tail suppliers that you move that inventory quicker, right? So it's finding a mix that aligns with your company vision.
And Christine, you haven't got a lot of money for each of these partners. So how do you incent them? How do you get them going? What are the sorts of things that you can actually be doing?
Sure, no problem. So in terms of, you really want to use your technology, able to engage them. You want to use digital engagement, make sure that it's relevant and segmented, so you're targeting them specifically to cut through the noise. And then in terms of incentivizing it, different ways. You can either incent based on performance, where everyone gets something once they deliver, whether it be a strategic behavior and the actual traditional sale, or a renewal after the fact. But also you centralize those activities to use non-monetary tokens or points or ballots to really keep those costs down, where everyone's going towards a prize for a chance to win, or something, or access to something, whether it be time with a CEO or time with a product owner, or tour of a plant. So there's ways you can get creative that aren't actually require money to do some of these activities.
Rod, if I could jump in on that one as well. It's also totally agreed with Christine. It's also about incenting behaviors. So especially with this long tail, maybe they don't have the revenue to get you to where you need to be, or to get them where they need to be, so that they're no longer considered the long tail. But if they're doing the activities that are showing you that they have skin in the game, that they are trying to lead with your product, I think it's also worth incenting those, not just the revenue.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And in terms, sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's important for us to realize that the long tail may always be long tail. So some of them are never, ever going to be our primary. And so when we are onboarding new partners and we have that profile in place, understand that we may get an initial bump in revenue initially, and then they kind of trail off. it's okay to understand that that's going to happen, but put in automation to stay in touch with them on a regular basis so that you can, when they're ready, engage and see that revenue bump.
Yeah, and just to add to what Kevin's saying is some of those partners, their clients are cyclical. So they may have peaks and valleys in terms of their sales cycles. They may sell everything in government season and, and coast on that somewhat for the rest of the year. So definitely taking their characteristics to heart in your strategy as well.
Okay, let me bring you into this. Could you be monitoring with these partners? So what are the kind of statistics that are really going to help you understand where they are and where do you get that information from?
Yeah, definitely. It can always be a challenge to get information, particularly when you're getting kind of spotty transactional data coming in. But there's a couple of pieces. I think, fellow panelists referred to this. When we're thinking about the contribution of long tail partners, it's not about those big deal sizes, right? So look for consistency, and consistency might not be every single quarter, it might have seasonality to it, but are they engaging with you regularly? So that's one piece. The coverage piece, like where are they located? Where are they providing value? What segment of customers are they addressing is another key piece of data. Also think about their specializations. What capabilities do they have? What certifications are they gravitating toward? And that's also a really important leading indicator too, right? If you've got long tail partners who are actively trying to learn more about your product, about your offerings, that's a great thing to be watching for. So those are a couple of pieces there. And additionally, I think sometimes to add on, sometimes data can be a hunt. We've engaged on a couple of really interesting projects to really get under the covers of what's happening with long tail partners. So one of them is follow the buying journey, right? So with long tail partners, you're going to see patterns. If you look at the macro data, look for those trends to identify, high performers and to see what is happening within your long tail. And for non-transacting partners, again, look for who's getting trained. And also look for, what other partners in the ecosystem are saying. Sometimes you've got kind of long tail partners who are actually big services providers, but they're not transacting a ton. They're non-transacting partners. Ask other partners in your ecosystem, hey, who are you subcontracting with if you're looking for some of those hidden services partners?
And Laurie, the big question on incentives, particularly with the long tail, do you incent the company? Do you incent the reps? Do you incent both? How do you figure that one out?
I think that's a mixed bag, right? It's a mixed bag of responses on this one, because I think with long tails, it's different motivators that drive either the company or the person, right? So I always say when I was dealing with long tail suppliers, when I was in the actual industry of being dealing with resellers, when I was with Microsoft, I mean, our long tail suppliers had a different type of incentive that they wanted, and it differed by the partner. So for instance, to Kate's point, some of them may want training, right? Some of them may want, instead of all monetary, as Christine was saying, right? Some of them might want training on a particular product, or maybe they're entering a new business model. They want to get up to speed in that new business model. They're taking on a new product that they want to sell for you, right? Just getting familiar with that. In other cases, it might be a contribution to help them with a customer conference, or talk, being a representative from the brand or from the vendor, where you can come out and actually speak to a customer conference or join a webinar or whatever the venue of media would be to get in touch with their end users or their customers. And the other thing I've seen on the incentives piece is different flavors are a mixed bag versus one size fits all, right? So I don't think the days of one size fits all isn't necessarily applicable to long tail, right? So again, they want a variety. It might change quarter to quarter. It might change at a more rapid speed than that. And getting back on communication, or with the data piece that Kate was talking about, I think it's being able to communicate in the format that those long tail suppliers want to communicate, right? They're not sophisticated. They're not using, maybe in some cases, high-tech systems. Perhaps they're using email, or, that's their way of communicating, right? So you got to be able to get that data in. And we consider that, of course, an unstructured data source. Bringing that in, putting structure around it, and make it usable within your, partner channel applications, et cetera.
Rod, I was thinking about Laurie's comment about how we incent some of these long tail users. And I think that it's important to remember sometimes what we give is what we get. And so because a lot of times right now, a lot of the solutions are multi-vendor solutions. So if we can pull in some of these long-term partners where we know that they're probably a key performer in a vendor that's going to go well with our solution, I think that's going to keep them engaged, and that's going to incent them to think about us more often, because they said, oh yeah, they gave me something, now let's give back and help them. And even if they don't, they're going to help influence some of those deals so that they actually close quicker. And sometimes that's a win too, if they can just help to influence a deal and get it closed quicker.
Yeah, and I agree with Lori that, you look at organizations or even individuals, and you're either an advocate of the long tail or you're not. There's really very few that are in the middle. But the one thing that I would call out is whichever side you're on, there is a long tail that you need to address. So whether it's the long tail of the partners or whether you're focused on your top performers, there's really a long tail in those partners as well. And it's the reps. You have top performing reps and reps that are maybe focused on other priorities, other competitors, other industries, that you need to apply these same long tail tactics everyone's talking about within those partners as well.
Heather, communication, your speciality. You've got thousands of partners. You want to keep in touch with them. They're getting thousands of emails every week from numerous vendors. They're probably dealing with 20 vendors, and you're certainly not one of their priorities. How do you get that message across?
Yeah, so it's interesting. As Christine was talking, I was thinking there are some of those partners in the long tail that you don't want to waste your time with. It's okay to say that these partners, they sold our product once because a customer asked for it, but when it comes to ROI, it's going to cost us more to stay in front of them than it is to just let them go. So when you're communicating, it's important to figure out, first of all, who those partners are. And the biggest challenge with communications is always, what does your list look like? Do you have an accurate list? Do you know what roles the people within those partner companies have? What do they care to hear about? What do they not care to hear about? I think it's important that your one avenue to the world, which is your website, has enough information from a partner perspective to make sure that people are getting what they need and they're able to delineate themselves to understand how they get communications and which communications they want. And then it's important to aggregate. So taking a newsletter, I always say, don't do 4 versions of a newsletter, because inevitably one person or 80% of your people are going to get every version. And they're like, why is this company sending me so much email? And 20% are going to not get the one that they want. So they'll be annoyed that you're communicating to them incorrectly. When you communicate one version of a newsletter, but put information where it needs to be. I always say a tech person will read from the top left all the way to the bottom right. So put the technology information at the bottom. A salesperson on the other side of the coin won't read past the first sentence if it doesn't sound like it's for them. So use color coding, use call outs, make sure that sales, marketing, executive, and tech know where to find the information, and then over communicate. If it's something that you're worried about a competitor or a non-partner getting a hold of, put that information behind a login, but make sure that the initial information is something that's intriguing. I need to know in 30 seconds or less why it's important to me and why I should pay attention. Call that 3 seconds, to be honest with you, especially if you're talking to the sales and marketing people. I can say that as a sales and marketing person. But make sure that you are putting all of the information out there that somebody might need. And if it's super important and proprietary, put it behind a login for your portal or your ecosystem management tool.
And I'll just add to Heather's point, just automate with personalization, right? You got to use automation. Lots of tools out there that make that happen.
Okay, if I can bring you into the discussion just for a second. The newsletter can be a really important way of understanding who's who in the partner. What kind of technologies can help you understand when you send the newsletter out, someone's clicked on something, you really begin to understand who they are and what they are? What are the sorts of things that you can do there?
Is that one for me?
Yes, it is.
I mean, definitely go with the most intelligent solutions that you can find, right? And so, always do an RFP to take a look at what tools are out there and what specifically meets your needs. There's a plethora of things, and if you're not getting what you need and you're not getting the data that you need out of your specific platform or out of your specific tools, go out and look. There's plenty of experts on this call and within the channel focus community who can, help assess your needs and get you the right solution. I know it's not super specific if others would like to hop in with specific capabilities.
Laurie, do you want to come in on that one? Really trying to identify who's who within the partners. What are some tips and tricks to do that?
Yeah, so specifically, I think it's looking at, of course, different data splits, right, for those partners and what they're actually, doing within your organization. I think one of the questions was also that has been coming through the chat is like the difference between how you want to communicate to long tail and how you want to communicate to the other 20%, right, of your business, right? So I like Heather's perception on do one newsletter, right, but make it pertinent to all of the audiences that you have, if possible. I mean, you might want to call out a spotlight within that communication to say, for our, you don't need to necessarily call them long tail, but for our specific smaller partners, right, or ones that are, call them a special category. Here's a tip or trick, that we want to target for you. The other thing I was thinking of too is everybody's interested in the overarching kind of communication output from their vendor, right? They want to understand, well, what are they doing? What's coming on the roadmap? What's targeted towards me? But in other cases, it might be what kind of partner in a box, if you will, do you have coming for me that I only sell one or two different solutions for them, and I want something easy to be able to consume and to be able to kind of get my team up and running easily, right? I know that term isn't used as often as it used to be, but I think especially for the long tail, there are specific needs that they have that are different, right? So it's maybe understanding the market blend of your partners and targeting specific information to that blend of partners. And so again, for a long tail, it might be what training do you have coming up, on your platform, having the ability to go out and grab templates, having the ability to maybe join a market space or a marketplace, for instance, and partner with another partner. What do you got out there for me to make me successful, right? As a partner or either long tail or other.
And in terms of identifying different roles, sometimes it's as simple as ask them. Put something in your infrastructure or your engagement with them where you ask them to self-identify, or run a referral program where if you want to go after, say, sales engineers or service technicians, run an engagement or incentive program or incentive initiative that allows them to refer those individuals from an audience that you already have good traction with.
Okay. I've got a couple of really good questions coming in. The first is, how important is it to fit partners in the long tail to a demographic market segment? Anyone like to come in on that? How does that help? What should we be doing?
So what I would say is that I think it's critical that upfront you're identifying and profiling your partners to make sure that you're in the very beginning knowing who you're bringing into your program, because sometimes we can inadvertently create a long tail that doesn't add value, and that can happen in the very beginning. So I think it is super important to understand who you're bringing onto your program, how they add value, where they actually fit. And then continue to do that process of updating their profiles and understanding what's important to them on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and I agree with Kevin that you have to continue, that the segmentation is critical, because if you're not talking their language, if you're not giving them relevant business value, then they're going to turn the channel on you and find someone that will. So you do have to make sure that you have that strategic multi-layered segmentation to be able to talk their language and be relevant to their business.
And there's another very important issue here. It is the long tail, but it might be our long tail. They might be really small for us, but you might be talking, our minnow and somebody else's Moby Dick. Hey, how do you identify those potential Moby Dicks from the minnows?
Great question. Couple of places that you can go to find data. One is doing a web scraping effort. That's something that you can always just go take a look, right? And you can do it in aggregate with your long tail, via some great technology there for web scraping. So that's one piece. A second piece is, this one is tougher, but do it manually. Do a little bit of web scraping yourself. Go and see what named logos show up on your competitors' websites in terms of their partners, or see if there's quotes or something that's publicly facing. Just go see. Sometimes that can be an interesting exercise if you're looking for something targeted. The next area of information, distributors can be helpful. They're not going to share confidential information necessarily, but they do have a lot of information on the long tail partner ecosystem. And then finally, there is competitive intelligence that's available on partners, and you can purchase that data from third-party informational places. So, a couple of options.
I would also say, Rod, and I see a question in here about referral or influencer partners. Just because someone's not a reseller partner, solution provider, or a managed service provider doesn't mean that they can't play in your ecosystem. It's about putting the right partners together with other partners. So if someone acts as a referral partner for you or an influencer for you, you can put them together with that solution provider so that they find each other, they're doing good business together. You're not having to manage that partner as if they are a reseller or they are a solution provider, but you're benefiting from the fact that they have the original relationship with the customer. So really think about your referral partners and your influencer partners, and they may not self-identify as that. If you're like, oh, you're not selling our products, but you're an influencer, they might not know what that means, but you can help define that for them and then help them within an ecosystem find other partners that they can do business with.
And I think it's important to make sure that you strategically understand what you're trying to do and not what another vendor is trying to do, because they may be a big player for another vendor, but they may never, ever be a big player for you. And so you don't need to be chasing someone just because they're big with somebody else and they're not with you. Understand where they fit within your strategic model, and then present them, like we've said before, present them with content that makes sense and allow them to influence and play the role that they play within your buyer's journey and not someone else's.
I think that to add on to that, Kevin, I think that low-hanging fruit, right? If you've got a long tail that's specializing in one specific area, and you think to yourself, why are they just focused on that one area, right? When we know they have a skill set for another area. I mean, just that's a simple communication, right? To have that conversation to say, you know, you're doing X, Y, Z, but I can see a natural progression to A, B, and C. And so, you know, tell me why. It could be not enough staff, not enough training, not enough whatever. And that's a huge opportunity for vendors to say, and brands to say, hey, we can help you with that, right? So it's a quick fix. So look for that low-hanging fruit as well with your long tail.
And I think that you know, not all of them are going to want to add those missing components that could do greatness. So I think that's where sometimes partner matching in the long tail comes into play, where you know, it make that introduction to a partner that you also have in your system that can fill in that gap, and together they can grow for your brand.
I'm going to play the
Really
Kevin role
important
here and say,
issue.
or automate it. Make sure that your ecosystem can find each other through an ecosystem management tool. Yeah, you're welcome.
A lot of us are managing these guys through. Hang on, Kevin. Let me just step in for a sec. A lot of us are managing these partners through distribution. If I'm Microsoft, I can turn around to a TD or a Cinex or whoever and say, I want that. If I'm a smaller vendor, what should I expect? What have you guys seen that distribution will actually provide? Who wants to come in on that one? Heather, you're front and center on screen at the moment.
I think there isn't one ecosystem, right? Each vendor company creates an ecosystem of partners, and then distribution creates an ecosystem of IT companies. So it's really up to, and then the greater ecosystem includes all of distribution, all of those partners, and all of those IT companies. So it's really important that we figure out how to make sure 1 + 1 = 3 on each of those levels, and go to the distribution with a plan or a way that we can all make more money together and delivering that strategy. Unfortunately, what happens is nobody's ready to make it happen until there's been one example of it. So you kind of have to do a test or have a hypothesis and put that strategy together. But it's really about making sure we're all working together and doing what we do best. One value proposition plus another value proposition equals a totally different value proposition. It's making sure you can identify that and sell that somewhat internally first.
Kate, you're nodding
Yeah,
frantically.
and I
can
love
see
what
on,
Heather
on,
said in
on
terms-
screen.
Oh, go for it, Christine.
I was going to say, I love what Heather said in terms of like, don't get trapped in that one size fits all, or that you're mirroring what someone successfully. Never have I seen a vendor that's exactly the same as the next one, even if they play in the same market, different cultures, different targets, different products. And you really need to look inward of what you need as an organization.
Absolutely. And to hop in too, so thinking about managing the long tail effectively at scale, obviously programmatic approaches are really key to that. So distribution is a great pathway, but don't only rely on distribution. So if you can identify some of those high propensity long tail partners using that segmentation that all of the panelists, my fellow panelists, have been talking about, pull those into programmatic means of accelerating their progress with you. So pull out those folks, address them programmatically so it's still, lower touch comparatively, and see what they can do.
Marketing with the long tail. Kevin, that's one of your specialities. You've got very little money because none of these guys are doing an awful lot of business with you. What's the most effective way to market to and through them?
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna go back to Heather again. So you just have to automate it, right? You want to set it and forget it. But when you're looking at automation, it's going to be important that you develop messaging that is targeted, that really goes along with the buyer's journey, and be consistent with it. Because consistency is going to be a key, because you never know where they are in their cycle, right? So you've got to make sure that you're hitting them at the right time. Consistency is just going to be the biggest key, along with education in your marketing initiatives.
And I think I'd add in there that just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Heather.
Thanks, Christine. I always say educate, engage, enable. So educate the partners how to do marketing, because if they're learning it from you, then they're more likely to feel like you're easy to do business with and they can learn from you. Engage them the way you want them to engage another prospect. So connect with them on LinkedIn. Make sure that they know where all of your materials are that might be freemium or free for them to use. And then enable. It doesn't mean that every single one of those long tail partners needs a login to your through channel marketing automation tool or all of your campaigns, but give them enough to be dangerous and to understand your value proposition and your messaging so that they can expound upon that.
And I would just say also, don't fall into the pitfall that we sometimes see where, they use that set it and forget it, mentality. It's set it, automate it, but you still have to work it. You still have to monitor it to find those gems, and also, potentially exit partners that just don't have value to you, or individuals in that long tail that don't have value to you.
And I'm going to steal one more thing from Heather, which I've heard her say a lot of times, and that is, and I love it, it's meet them where they are, right? Because they're going to be different levels. And so thank you, Heather, for always sharing that with us.
Anytime, Kev.
And Laurie, if I can bring you into this as well. One of the things you're getting, I'm a partner, I'm a long tail partner. You're not very important to me. So I'm getting numerous communications. What are some of the things I can do to differentiate my communication from those of the competition, so that long tail partner actually wants to look and read what you're sending them?
Yeah, I think that's the part we've forgotten. Some of these long tailers really do want to become a bigger partner with us, right? They do want to do more with us. And so I think it's identifying again who those partners are. And the communication is a little bit tweaked for that, right? Because they've got more potential. I love the enablement, the 3 E's, as you were saying, engage and enable. But I think with those partners, you're going to see that, hey, we're raising our hand. We want to do more. nurture them like you would, even one of your larger partners, help them get to the next stage. They may never be part of your top 20%, right? But they may be part of they go from a long tail to a middle tier supplier or a middle tier partner, right? So that's important, because I think we think that, that large group stays in that large group for a long time. That's not necessarily the case, right? We want to give them the tools, the enablement, et cetera, to grow if they want to grow, if that's really what part of their direction is, right?
Okay, and question for everyone. Are there any best practices on the onboarding of long tail partners? Would you leave it to distribution to onboard them yourself, or have a hybrid approach? Heather.
Kevin, should we say it at the same time? Automate. I think it's a couple of things. One, I think it's having, micro content that moves them toward the right avenue. One of the things that I always say that Kevin mentioned is meet them where they are. So if a partner is already pretty good at social, then you want them to dive into things like SEO and identifying prospects and all of those things. So if you have micro content that teaches them how to do those things, they can jump in wherever it makes sense. And then I would also ensure that they feel like they're getting the resources from you that they need without overwhelming, and that can all be automated for the most part.
And I think that we shouldn't leave onboarding to chance. I think we really have to take control of onboarding and don't leave it to the disties, because the disties have their own initiatives and what they're trying to accomplish that may not be what we're trying to accomplish, especially if we're a smaller vendor for that distie. They're not going to be training and giving the partners that we want, our long-tail partners, the information that they need. Also, we want to use that onboarding process to collect key information that will help us to understand how to profile them in the future, how to communicate with them, and then where we can pull them into opportunities and share opportunities in the future.
If I could jump on that really quickly, having worked, when I was at EMC and Dell, I worked really closely with all of our distribution. Every large IT company had a separate team. So you would literally be competing internally at the distributor for mind share from those partners with somebody who was sitting 2 desks away from you when we went into offices. So it's really important to ensure that you are owning that and not letting distribution sort of overwhelm those partners with too much messaging from all of their IT companies.
Yeah, and I think you also want to create.
Sorry, I was trying to bring Kate in there a second, Christine.
Go
Kate,
ahead.
Absolutely. Well, and again, if you're going to take ownership of it, do it right. We've heard too many horror stories from partners who have essentially onboarded with a vendor and then nothing. They just log into the portal and then nothing. Make sure that that's a curated experience, to my fellow panelists' input, right? Highlight the content that's 100 level, that helps get them in the door, that helps get them acquainted. Here's where your resources are. And if you can personalize that, even better. As you're gathering that information from the profile of the partners as they onboard, use that information to drive directed content to them that gets them in the door, and make that entry point really easy, that next step really simple and clear. Go for it, Christine. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I jumped in. I agree that definitely you want to be part of the onboarding process. There may be certain things that you can leave to the distributors as part of that, in terms of their best practices and their process, but you want to make sure that you're building that relationship with your brand. You're building those positive touch points. You want to build confidence that if they have that big opportunity, that they can reach out to you to really, cultivate that relationship and drive that growth.
Got another question here. Anyone can jump in on this one. What is the value of the Ingram Cloud Marketplace? Fulfillment only? Deathly silence on that one.
Can we insert any marketplace here?
You can indeed if you wish, Heather.
I mean, marketplaces are here. That's how you always see sort of the evolution happen in consumer products first, right? If you told me 20 years ago that I would order something and it would end up on my doorstep in 24 hours, I would think you were crazy. But thank goodness, because as a mom of young kids, somebody needs pink tights tomorrow, they're going to get pink tights tomorrow. I think the marketplace is how we are now learning to buy, and that whether the partners are assisting and building a services practice around the solutions that are being procured on the marketplace, or the marketplace is going direct to the customer and the customer is figuring it out, that is how customers are buying. So we need to help our partners figure out how to build that services practice, how to still make money from those customers who are buying on a marketplace. It depends. Is it a private offer? Whether or not there is, it's just fulfillment, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that that's how customers are buying.
And I've got a question coming in. Can you rely on distribution to provide long tail automation? Laurie, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think you can, and it's more of a hybrid approach. I think you still need to have some ownership from what we've heard from the panel and others. I think you want that ownership, and in some cases though, the distributor can enhance and extend, if you will. But you want to own those long tail suppliers as you would your top 20%. And I don't know how the others feel about that, but I look at that as more of like a hybrid approach. You still need to somewhat manage that from some perspective, right? Versus just letting the distributors do what they want to do, right?
Agreed. 100%.
And another question, and then we'll move on from distribution. But my organization is reluctant to put vendor resources on long tail partners who buy from distributors. They expect distributors to manage them end to end and manage their growth. How realistic is this approach? Kate, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's not super realistic. And I think in part that sometimes comes down to just a little bit of sloppy long tail strategy, right? It's like a kind of an excuse for not being more engaged in some of the ways that we've been talking about throughout this session. So at the end of the day, yeah, you should be engaged and shouldn't leave it just to distribution. There's points at which you as a vendor are responsible for providing a personalized touch, for communicating the right message at the right time. And those aren't pieces that you can necessarily leave up to distribution, because they're balancing a bunch of different vendors within their portfolio. They're never going to provide those personal touches to your long tail partners. They're never going to be effective at moving partners along the journey with you as you will be yourself. So strategically engage, even if distribution is doing a bulk of the job.
And a couple of questions. We're almost running out of time, but one key question I'm going to ask. I'm managing the long tail. What are the key technologies? We've talked about automation. You can't automate without technology. And Kate, you're still front and center, so I'll start with you. What are the 2 or 3 key pieces of technology you need to make this happen?
Yeah, a really great PRM is the starting point. And then a second piece that I would say is always a centralized data repository that you are actively keeping up to date and practicing great hygiene on. Lots of great options in both of those spaces.
What are thoughts on that? Key technologies we need.
Was that Heather or Kevin?
Oh, sorry.
Mind you, you speak with one voice. I should have said Heather / Kevin.
I don't know about that. Get us in a room and there's definitely some debate.
There it is.
I would agree. I think it's important that you start at the top and in place where things can bubble up, that you have one point of entry so that your partners get the view that you want them to get, and that maybe they can also put some of their technologies where they need to be. If a partner wants to use your through channel marketing automation, great. If a partner has their own, it should still live inside of an ecosystem management tool, so that they have one place to get all of the things and all of the data comes together, right? There's nothing worse than your partners and your partner teams internally trying to figure out where all of the data lives and how it works together if they're all in disparate systems.
Yeah, and I would like to just kind of add, obviously, you need to have an incentives management program, right? That's going to be important so that you can automate the incentives. It's important for you to have some marketing automation platforms. It's important for you to have a learning management system so that you can do your onboarding. And I think those are some of the key elements that you have to have. I mean, those are just kind of table stakes elements that are required.
I think also a communication tool where not only can you push them communication that's relevant to them, but they can seek information, and also they can communicate back with you. So it's a two-way relationship that you're building with them.
Excellent. We're almost out of time. So one final question for everyone, and that is, if there was one thing that you think is most important in managing the long tail, what would that be? And Laurie, if I can start with you.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Pay attention, right? Pay attention to that long tail, pay attention to what they want to do, if they want to grow, what they're doing for your company, how they align to your joint goals. And just understand that not everybody's in that same place, right? So be proactive, pay attention, and make sure that you're giving them the attention they need, especially those that are on a growth trajectory.
Ooh, can you hear me?
I think that was Christine. Yeah, you cut out for a second, Rod.
Hi, Christine. Can you hear me?
I can now.
Excellent. What would be the one thing that you think is really critical to managing the long tail?
Yeah, whether you're an advocate of the long tail or whether you're not, definitely use the tactics that you would on a long tail, whether it be at the partner level or in your top 20 at the rep level, because they're really important to really accelerate that flywheel and growth and engagement. So either one is relevant depending on their strategy that you're taking.
Kevin, can you hear me?
Sorry,
Am I
Rod, what was
having a
that?
problem?
That was Kevin.
I said, Kevin, what would be your one issue?
You're on mute, Kevin.
I would say understand who your partners, long tail partners are, where they fit within your strategy, and make sure that you have a plan to keep them engaged.
Heather?
I was going to say strategy, so he stole mine, but I think it's important that you decide at what level of long tail are you going to engage them? How do you, if you're not going to engage them, how do you make them influencers and referral partners? And identify your communications to them so that they know that they are important to you, or that they're not, and you're going to sort of put them in this other bucket and help them build their business anyway.
Good.
And I think that's me last. Make sure that you have, make sure that you have your engines for scale firmly in place, your platform, your partners, that's your disties, your program, and those partner profiles for your long tail partners. Those are absolutely key to engage the ecosystem at scale and maximize the partner lifetime value, including for long tail partners.
Excellent. Heather, Kate, Laurie, Christine, and Kevin, thank you very, very much indeed. There are a couple of questions that we haven't covered so far, and we will get back to you. We will answer those and get back to you before the end of tomorrow. Please do take the survey that you will see coming up, and please have a happy holiday and a fabulous new year. So once again, Heather, Kate, Kevin, Laurie, and Christine, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Rod.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rod.
Thank you.